Hell yeah. In fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christie's, and Inaya Falarin on your TV, radio and online. Loads for you today. Beergate. Gosh, I mean, you just hate to see it, don't you? The Ukraine latest as well. A full frontal politics roundup, especially when it comes to the porn side of things. And turns out you still can't see your GP. Who knew?
Yes, well, make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show. But first, it's the latest news.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 10. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. 2 British charity workers have reportedly been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. The volunteers were reportedly detained earlier this week at a checkpoint close to Zaporizhia in southern Ukraine. The 2 men, both civilians, were working as part of a joint humanitarian project to help provide food and medical supplies, as well as evacuation support. The reports haven't yet been independently verified. A special operation will take place today to try and evacuate civilians from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. The decision was announced by the Ukrainian president's office. Hundreds of civilians are said to be sheltering in bunkers underneath the plant, which has been sealed off by Russian forces. It's thought around 500 wounded Ukrainian fighters are in there, some in a serious condition. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of trying to humiliate the UN. It's after 2 missiles were fired into Kyiv during a visit by Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. The rockets shook the central district in Ukraine's capital. One of them struck a residential building, injuring at least 10 people. Kyiv's mayor Vitaly Klitschko says the capital's still a target for Russia.
Kyiv still the target of Russians, yes, of course. The capital of Ukraine is a goal, and they want to occupy it. They doesn't have a chance to do that. Thanks for Ukrainian forces, for Ukrainian soldiers. They destroy the plans of Russians, but we see the risk, huge risk, regular attack, and right now it's main priority to save the lives of the people.
The Ministry of Defence is sending around 8,000 British troops to Eastern Europe this summer in an effort to support Ukraine. Dozens of tanks will be deployed to countries including Finland and North Macedonia in one of the largest deployments since the Cold War. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace called the decision a show of solidarity and strength alongside NATO allies. International Trade Secretary Anne-Marie Trevelyan told GB News these exercises are necessary to keep troops sharp.
Very pleased to be sending 8,000 of our amazing army troops to go and do some exercises with NATO and indeed the Joint Expeditionary Force countries across Europe. These exercises which happen at different scales all the time, so that our soldiers are always prepared should they have to go to war.
Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says she's appalled by the arrest in the US of the British Virgin Islands Premier on drug trafficking charges. Andrew Foy was detained by the Drug Enforcement Agency in Miami over an alleged conspiracy to import cocaine and money laundering. The DEA says Foy agreed to use British Virgin Islands ports to ship cocaine in return for a payment of $500,000. Now, three-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker could be sent to jail when he's sentenced later for flouting the terms of his 2017 bankruptcy. Our reporter Ellie Costello's at Southwark Crown Court for us today. Ellie, what more can you tell us?
Well, Rhiannon, there's a huge pool of press here right now. We're expecting the former world champion, tennis #1, Boris Becker, any moment now. He is going to be sentenced at midday today for concealing hundreds of thousands of pounds after being declared bankrupt. Well, what is likely to happen today? Well, speaking to legal experts, they say it is likely he is going to be handed a prison sentence between 2 to 5 years. There is a maximum sentence of 7 years for these charges. He may only serve 9 months of that, but we will find out at midday when Judge Deborah Taylor sentences Boris Becker at Southwark Crown Court today.
Ellie, thank you, and do keep us posted. Ellie Costello there. A British terrorist known for being one of the 4 ISIS militants nicknamed the Beatles is being sentenced in a US court today. 38-year-old Alexander Amonkoti from West London was convicted for his role in the torture and killings of Western hostages in Syria in the mid-2010s. Koti pleaded guilty to a range of charges relating to US victims and could face the rest of his life behind bars. And Amazon has recorded its first quarterly loss since 2015 as the boom to its business from the pandemic starts to fade. The e-commerce giant says online sales slipped 3% in the first 3 months of the year post-lockdown. Rising costs, supply chain issues and the impact of the war in Ukraine have all impacted the retailing giant. Amazon reported a loss of $3.8 billion, much of that driven by a hit from its investment in electric car maker Rivian. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. It's back to Patrick and Anaya with To The Point.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flower and Iman. I'm Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up to kickstart your day, so here's the menu.
Right then, well, 8,000 British soldiers will be sent to Eastern Europe to deter Russian aggression in the largest deployment of troops since the Cold War. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is calling it a show of solidarity and strength as UK service personnel join NATO allies.
Yes, well, Labour's Beergate, the opposite party, is under fire over a reported lockdown breach after the Mail confirms Angela Rayner was with Keir Starmer when he was pictured drinking a bottle of beer. Is this a double standard?
Yes, massively. Anyway, are the culture wars driving political polarisation? And will they impact how you vote in the upcoming local elections? And now we're taking a closer look at that.
Yes, we have all that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure you get in touch with your views as usual. GBViews at gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on the Labour Party's Beergate.
Oh, it'd be very ironic, wouldn't it, if it was Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner who had to resign over an illegal gathering. You'd hate to see it, wouldn't you? In a sensational U-turn, Labour has now admitted that Angela Rayner was with Keir Starmer at an event in Durham, the very same one where Sir Keir was filmed having a beer with colleagues in what looks suspiciously like a party. Labour had denied this, but they've now U-turned, saying Rayner was there and it was just an honest mistake when they said that she wasn't. An honest mistake. Well, how can it be an honest mistake? Labour were asked directly whether or not Angela Rayner was there, and they denied it. This looks like a massive lie, doesn't it? And goodness gracious me, there's more birthday cake. Labour sources confirm that staff had presented Sir Keir with 2 birthday cakes, apparently, in September 2020, when COVID guidance stated that people should not hold or attend celebrations where social distancing would be difficult. Again, you just hate to see it, don't you? Perhaps Sir Keir will say he didn't realise he was breaking the rules, if indeed he has. Perhaps it's just another honest mistake. He's been acting in good faith this whole time and that he genuinely didn't recall any of these incidents. But I find that quite hard to believe. Sir Keir said we were working in the office, stopped for something to eat and then carried on working. No party, no breach. But here are the receipts, because the online event he was allegedly attending finished at 9:20 p.m, 45 minutes, apparently, before he was filmed drinking beer with colleagues. Perhaps now he and Angela Rayner have been exposed as petty point-scoring politicians who have actually been the very things they've accused Boris Johnson of being: dishonest. I had Labour MP John Speller on yesterday, who said this story was just a smokescreen to distract from Boris Johnson breaking the rules he helped to create. Another said it's an old story. A smokescreen? An old story? What absolute rubbish. A terrible attempt at spin. How can it be considered an old story when Labour have tried to drag Partygate out for months and months? How can it be a smokescreen when this is the new development? But I tell you what, at least Sir Keir can rely on his friends in the left-wing media to try to cover up this scandal. Take a look at the BBC's homepage this morning. Absolutely no mention of it whatsoever there. No mention of a potential police investigation into the leader and deputy leader of the Labour Party. I wonder what The Guardian has to say about this. Well, gosh, would you believe it? It doesn't appear to be there either. That's amazing, isn't it? If this was Boris Johnson, they'd be all over it, wouldn't they? Look, we're all equal before the law, no matter who created the law. If Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner are served with fixed penalty notices or whatever else, will they practice what they preach and resign? I mean, here are the receipts, you know, don't stand there and go bang on about... I mean, I didn't really care about Partygate. The only reason I care about this is because Labour have longed it out for so long.
Yeah, there's undoubtedly a lot of hypocrisy there, and I do think that a lot of people should be questioning whether or not we should have had those kinds of hyper-minutiae rules.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it seems that every single person that had broken it in one form or another. But the only point that I will say in defence is that I do think there is a fundamental difference between the Prime Minister, the person that implemented those rules, and, for example, other parties. It's not a huge difference. I think it's paper thin, but I do think the one that implements those rules and is accountable for them should be held to significant standards than necessarily other people in that respect. So I do think there is a stronger exposure of hypocrisy when the Prime Minister doesn't follow the rules he implemented. But, you know, it does show that maybe it's the rules we should have been questioning, not just whether or not in September 2020 someone had a beer.
No, I agree with you that I thought the rules were absolutely bonkers, don't get me wrong on that one. And I can see the argument, absolutely, about Boris Johnson being held to a higher standard. He was the one who helped create the rules, etc. So I do understand that. I don't personally really agree with that. I think Keir Starmer is standing for high office. He's standing to be in that role and therefore should conduct himself with an equal level of gravitas when it comes to these things. But also, for me, it wasn't so much that was what Labour kind of said. It wasn't so much that Boris Johnson maybe broke the rules. It was that he might not have been that honest about it. And that's really the kicker now for Labour, where they've dug themselves to me a massive hole, because it appears, anyway, on the face of it, it appears that perhaps they weren't as honest about this as they could have been.
Yeah, I think we've almost switched roles, because before you were saying that you didn't care about Partygate, and I was saying, no, it's important, and now I'm kind of saying I don't care about it. And the reason I don't is because we are seeing, you know, potentially a war in Europe in the form of, for example, Britain putting troops in Eastern Europe, and I do think that we may well see an unravelling that will fundamentally change the heart of Europe and democracy as we know it. And I think talking about someone having a beer in September 2020 just pales in comparison to what we're about to grapple with.
I agree completely, and this is why I'm saying I wonder whether or not now it'll all go away. If Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner just shut up about the whole Boris Johnson Partygate thing and stop dragging it out, because now they're kind of embroiled in their own scandal. Another cracking one from a Labour MP this morning. Well, with everything going on in the world, are we really talking about this? I've been saying that for months, mate. Saying that for absolutely months. Putin rolled the tanks in. Boris Johnson unveiled a Rwanda scheme, right, to radically change our asylum system. The second question he was asked that day was about Partygate. We've had his trip to India completely overshadowed by Partygate, despite trade deals and goodness knows what else. So, yes, with everything else going on in the world, you know, we shouldn't be talking about this. But the only reason I am banging on about this now is because of the way the Labour Party have done it. Yeah. But anyway, moving on to something more important.
Yes, well, it's the 65th day of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The MOD reports around 8,000 British Army troops will participate in a military exercise across Eastern Europe to combat Russian aggression. This is one of the largest deployments since the Cold War.
Well, dozens of tanks will be deployed to countries ranging from Finland to North Macedonia this summer. Meanwhile, tributes have been paid to Scott Sibley after the Foreign Office confirmed the British national died in Ukraine and another, sadly, is missing.
Yes, Stephen Wichard is a freelance journalist and joins us live from Kiev with the latest. Thank you so much, Stefan. I mean, is this a bit too late? I mean, we said in the introduction, this is days, weeks into the invasion, and Russia has already done incredible, huge damage in Ukraine. Is it a bit too late for us to be putting troops in Eastern Europe, or is this the right time? What do you think?
Well, I think from the Ukrainian perspective, if you talk to politicians, for example, down here, or Ukrainian experts, they will say, yes, the West have been naive, have been like just closing their eyes for what they have said have been obvious for years, that Russia would plan an invasion eventually. And when they do, Ukraine would need to defend and the West will need to defend. But even now we've seen a lot of weapons come to Ukraine, and that is making a difference.
Oh, OK. I do wonder, though, whether or not...
making exercises.
It's all right. OK, no, go on, carry on.
Yeah, I mean, and then we're talking about the more broader picture, right? About the exercises, for example, in Eastern Europe, and I think that in the perspective here from Ukraine, yes, people are saying that this is also too late. The West have been too late in waking up, and from the Ukrainian soldiers, for example, I've spoken to, they will say, well, the only reason why you don't have a Russian problem in NATO countries at the moment is because Ukraine have been able to put up such a fight.
Yeah, OK. Is there any potential that Vladimir Putin might see this as even more provocation? He's been pumping out the old nuclear threat on his national television shows in Russia. Could this be an added provocation for him?
It is possible. I mean, we don't know what Putin is thinking, but he has been threatening potentially, like you say, we're fearing something like a nuclear weapon being used. He has threatened about potentially hitting supply routes into Ukraine where, the West is supplying weapons, and that potentially also that he would see legitimate targets in, for example, Poland. So yes, I think there is something going on. Yesterday, we also saw a bombing of Kiev during the visit of the UN Secretary General. So, I mean, there is something going on, and whether Putin would use this as a possibility to escalate the situation and use weaponry we haven't seen so far, only time can tell.
I mean, there has been reports, because Russia originally was saying that actually to have Russian oil and gas that European countries would have to pay in rubles, and originally they rejected that, and now it seems that some European countries are doing that. I mean, is this blackmail on the part of Russia? And it's quite worrying to see that some European countries are actually capitulating.
Yes, I think we can say that this is definitely Russia trying to fight back. And, they know that it goes both ways, right? Europe is dependent on Russian gas a lot, enormously, especially a country like Germany. But of course, another way, Russia is also dependent on the revenues. It goes both ways. So we see that this is a weapon used on both sides. We see that Russia is threatening to stop gas, for example, to Europe, or to say that you have to pay in the local currency, ruble, the Russian currency. And on the other side, you have some Western countries threatening to stop importing gas from Russia. And whether it's the West giving in somehow, I think it's hard to say. But I think that the only time will tell as well about that, where this is really heading, and whether we are looking at the West like giving in to these to these Russian demands, or whether we will see the West unite and actually, actually stop importing Russian gas and oil, at least over some time period.
And just finally, Stefan, I mean, a week and a half ago, Boris Johnson said that this war could last to at least the end of next year. Are European countries in the West preparing for a long war, or is there, in your view, something that can be done to end this war as quick as possible?
I'm not sure whether I actually know whether the West is ready to do this. I think it's really hard to tell. I also heard some experts talk about that this could actually last for years, and not only for the end of this year. But I can say that in Ukraine, they are preparing for that scenario. And when I am talking to locals here in Ukraine, for example, people who have witnessed intense fighting around their homes, they are filled with hatred. And they're not ready to give in to Russian demands, at least not a lot of them. And so, I mean, from the Ukrainian side, at least from the population, they're ready to make a stand and to keep fighting. And whether the West will support that, we don't know how long.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real shame that people in mainland Europe clearly don't care about whether or not Russia takes Ukraine. I think that's very short-sighted of them. If they did, presumably, they would be doing much more to help stop it. It just seemed like Britain, as an outlier. But anyway, Stefan Weichert there is a freelance journalist and joins us live, obviously, from Kiev. Thank you very, very much. And, it's a real shame, I think, that the likes of the Germans and the French are just not getting on board with
I'm really worried about European moral support waning.
I'm worried about European morals, actually, because I don't think they've got any.
Well, this is what I'm saying. I think that I'm worried that their support for Ukraine will wane, as, for example, they may regard it as economically inconvenient for them. But this is, I think, a war that goes to the heart of democracy in Europe, and a grotesque and sickening and unjustified invasion of Ukraine cannot be let to happen lightly, in my view. So I really hope that the resolve maintains and we continue to support Ukraine.
It's our resolve, fine, but I mean, what resolve of the French and Germans and some major European... What resolve? The resolve of sending over 5,000 helmets or, thoughts and prayers. We'll have a vigil, yeah, all right, but, Kiev is being bombed. Right, we're going to go into the inbox, GBViews at GBNews.uk. I think it's time both parties in the House of Commons stop all this childish bickering and point scoring. It's like a really poor reality show, and that's from Jim. And that's kind of what I hope this is now. If this kind of Starmer and Rayner stuff has got a bit of traction to it, hopefully they just all shut up about it and they get on with the business of running a country. And no name on this, but some strong words about Starmer and Rayner, and someone here, I think Jeff, pointing out that Keir Starmer actually he voted for those rules and wanted stronger rules, so if indeed he has broken them, is it even worse? Oh, gosh,
yes.
Who knows? Who knows?
We will be reading more of your views throughout the show. Well, after the break, we'll be joined by Chair of the Defence Select Committee on British troops taking part in the largest military exercise since the Cold War. That's after the weather.
Good morning, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Another dry day today for the vast majority. Many of us seeing a bit more blue sky compared to yesterday, and as a result, with a bit more sunshine, feeling a little warmer. This area of high pressure has been dominating our weather all week. These weather fronts are threatening to topple in during the weekend, and that will bring some rain around. But for the time being, as I said, it's another dry day for the vast majority. Quite grey again across parts of eastern England, staying pretty gloomy for some here all day. There's a small chance of a shower, actually. And across eastern parts of Scotland, a bit more cloud developing through the day, and we could also see a shower or two here. But for many, it's dry and fine. Yes, some cloud, but many places seeing some good spells of sunshine, a bit brighter than yesterday. And as a result, a little warmer, 15, 16, maybe 17 in Glasgow, perhaps even 18 on the west coast of Scotland. Meanwhile, the east coast, just 12 or 13 Celsius. So again, feeling fairly fresh here for the time of year. During this evening, I think we'll see still a lot of cloud across East Anglia and the southeast, and other eastern areas seeing the cloud increasing once more. And certainly in the northwest, those weather fronts starting to edge in. But for the majority, it's a dry night with clear skies. Another cold one again. Hint of blue on the chart. Gardeners, again, a touch of frost likely, particularly over parts of the Midlands, southern England and northern England, maybe East Wales too. It will be another fine day, though, for the bulk of England and Wales on Saturday. Perhaps not as much cloud across eastern areas either, so a better chance of seeing some sunshine here. However, Scotland and Northern Ireland starting to see a change with cloud increasing and rain slowly pushing in during the day, eventually getting into the central belt down towards Belfast. 12 or 13 here, but for Birmingham, London 16, 17, similar conditions across much of Wales. So that area of high pressure is finally shrinking away. Wet weather in the north on Saturday from this area of low pressure. It'll fizzle out a little bit, but it will bring more cloud on Sunday to England and Wales and a few showers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. It's Friday. Yes, it's 10:25. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christie's, and Anaya Falarin-Iman on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, it's day 65 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Ministry of Defence say 8,000 British Army troops will engage in military exercises across Eastern Europe to combat Russian aggression. It is one of the biggest deployments since the Cold War.
It is, indeed, yes. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has said the security of Europe has never been more important. These exercises will see our troops join forces with allies and partners across NATO and the Joint Expeditionary Force in a show of solidarity and strength. In one of the largest shared deployments since the Cold War. It's a really interesting development, this, actually.
Yes, but will publicly showing training exercises deter Putin's aggression towards Ukraine? Well, joining us now is Tobias Elwood, Conservative MP and Chair of the Defence Select Committee. Welcome to the programme and thank you for joining us this morning. I'll ask you what I asked the journalist that was in Kiev. Is this too late? I mean, we've had weeks of Russia flattening Ukrainian cities and thousands of people dead. I mean, is this too late or a necessary step in your view?
You ask such an important question, which I think, future generations may ask why we did not do more. Why didn't we send a division into Ukraine prior to the invasion? I think we were spooked a bit by this thought that Russia had this formidable capability, which it didn't. And also we've become rather complacent, if you like, in the responsibilities, the duties to look after our international security and our rules-based order. It doesn't come for free. It needs defending. But we are learning fast, and Ben Wallace is absolutely right to recognise that Britain needs to and can do more. So I'm really pleased to see this deployment, 8,000 troops, by any stretch, big exercise. Some of those troops are already there, don't forget. A formidable show of force that illustrates Britain's agility, our combat readiness, our willingness to actually stand up and push back. But I agree with you, this is well overdue.
Yeah, but I mean, are we just covering for French and German weakness here? I'm getting increasingly annoyed by the lack of action from our European so-called friends.
again, as we're learning, don't forget, we were discussing whether to send offensive, defensive weapons. We're moving on from that. People like myself, I think yourself as well, have been nudging governments across Europe to do more. It needs more coordination. There isn't an international leader right now. There's no Churchillian figure that's actually drawing all together the countries from across Europe. It's the leader of the Western world. Is not nowhere to be seen really on this front. I'm pleased to see that the Americans are now putting more money in. There's no doubt about that. But there's a vacuum for leadership, and I hope Britain will take that. I would make the point, though, if I may, that this tempo of activity is not sustainable. This conflict is now going on, moving up to over 2 months. It's taking a toll on our armed forces. Increased operational commitments. It's depleting our own weapons systems as well. My colleagues, I plead to my parliamentary friends, please recognise we will need to increase defence spending if we are to actually tackle the challenging security threats that are going to dominate this next decade.
Yeah. And what are we hoping to achieve, though, by deploying troops to Eastern Europe? Because, at least from a Russian perspective, they don't seem to care very much about damaging themselves reputationally across the globe, economically, or even militarily. So is there any indication that doing this will actually change Russia's tack at all?
Well, let's just...
Oh, well, yeah, OK, all right, well, hopefully we'll get Tobias back. I think he might be coming back, is it? No? OK, no, well, it's all right, we'll just... No, unfortunately, we don't... Oh, he's back, yes, good, Tobias, Tobias is back in the game. Right, OK, sorry. Go on, carry on, Tobias.
Yes, I don't know if my connection is as strong as it should be. But as I was just saying, I think NATO needs to recognise that it needs to, regroup after the humiliation of Afghanistan, recognise that it must invest in its equipment and its posture. It's important that Putin recognises that we are serious. Putin exploits weakness. He respects strength. We're still not using NATO in the way that we should do, but we're getting far, far better at it. And it's good to see Britain, Ben Wallace, actually pushing more for this.
Yeah, indeed. Look, thank you very much, Tobias. Great to have you on the show, as always. You've been calling for increased defence budgets for a very, very long time, actually. You and I have spoken on off over at least the last couple of years, and it's been a regular theme. Well, now, hopefully, you might get what you want, I suppose. A shame it's taken this to do it, though. Tobias Ellwood, Conservative MP and Chair of the Defence Select Committee, thank you yet again for appearing on the show. I thought you raised some cracking points there. First and foremost, a vacuum of leadership, not just on the continent, but in the West. Vacuous US president, some people would say, and an anonymous European leadership group. Also, the depletion of our weapons stock. How many weapons has France then? Are they all right? Are they selling their weapons?
No, I do think that we should be raising military spending, and I do think that we need to take seriously the reality that war is in the present moment, in the here and now, and a realistic and often likely possibility given what Russia's actions has ensued. And I think that Putin has made a terrible and grave mistake, and I think that his actions may well have set off a chain of events that will lead to a complete reworking of the international order, whereas Russia will be incredibly isolated and marginalised for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely. People getting in touch, though, saying as well that actually we think that we're poking the bear a little bit by sending troops out there. It's difficult to know what to do in that sense, so I'm not sure what else we can do.
Yeah.
I would rather be on our version of history, our side of history, than sitting there, France, Germany, Spain, etc., doing absolutely nothing.
There's only... I really understand that point, and I've had these conversations with many people, but, I mean, there's only so far you can take it. Is there no red line? At what point, will Putin, his actions, lead us to act? At what point we cannot just accept this continuing invasion without any pushback.
Absolutely, and just quickly, Russian state TV as well, just to remind you all, is pumping out the nuclear threat as well. The quote was, "We all have to die one day," which is pretty ominous, but anyway, there we go. After the break, are there enough doctors to tackle the NHS backlog, or is the problem that they simply just refuse to see you? We'll investigate why only 1/3 of you can get a GP appointment in some parts of the country, but that's after these headlines.
Good morning, it's 10:32. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Two British charity workers have reportedly been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. The volunteers are said to have been detained earlier this week at a checkpoint close to Zaporizhia in the south. The two men, both civilians, were working as part of a joint humanitarian project to help provide food and medical supplies, as well as provide evacuation support. The reports haven't yet been independently verified. A special operation will take place today to try and evacuate civilians from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. The decision was announced by the Ukrainian president's office. Hundreds of civilians are said to be sheltering in bunkers underneath the plant, which has been sealed off by Russian forces. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is accusing Russia of trying to humiliate the United Nations. It's after two missiles were fired into Kiev during a visit by Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. The rockets shook the central district in Ukraine's capital, and one struck a residential building, injuring at least 10 people. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says she's appalled by the arrest in the US of the British Virgin Islands Premier on drug trafficking charges. Andrew Foy was detained by the Drug Enforcement Agency in Miami over an alleged conspiracy to import cocaine and money laundering. And Amazon has recorded its first quarterly loss since 2015 as the pandemic boom to its business starts to fade. The e-commerce giant reported a loss of $3.8 billion. Online sales slipped 3% in the first 3 months of the year post-lockdown. Rising costs, supply chain issues and the impact of the war in Ukraine have all affected the retail giant. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. To the Point with Patrick and Anaya is back in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 10:37. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flaren-Iman, and Patrick Christys. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, very much so. Now, former world #1 tennis star, tennis sensation Boris Becker is facing 7 years in prison for fraud, with his sentencing due to take place this morning. Our reporter Ellie Costello tells us more.
Wimbledon champion Boris Becker was found guilty of concealing hundreds of thousands of pounds following his bankruptcy 5 years ago. The court heard how he transferred £350,000 to other accounts, hid a property in Germany, and failed to declare 75,000 shares in a tech firm and a £700,000 loan. He was convicted under the Insolvency Act by Southwark Crown Court on April the 8th. The father of four was legally obliged to disclose all of his assets when he was declared bankrupt in 2017 over an unpaid loan of more than £3 million on his estate in Mallorca. Once nicknamed Boom Boom for his powerful, dominant serve, he was acquitted on another 20 charges, including failing to hand over trophies and medals from his tennis career. The former world number one has claimed 49 singles titles during his 16 years as a tennis pro. During the trial, Becker said that his £38 million career earnings had been swallowed by his expensive divorce, child maintenance payments, and expensive lifestyle commitments, including a house in Wimbledon that cost £22,000 in rent each month. He said bad publicity had damaged brand Becker, making it hard for him to earn enough to pay off his debts. He claimed he had done wrong, but not knowingly. Ellie Costello, GB News.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll have to wait and see whether or not he ends up in the Grand Slammer, of course, anyway.
Yes, well, a campaign group is warning that 4 in 5 GPs have been stressed, anxious or depressed in the last year and are calling for more action to alleviate burnout amongst family doctors.
But this comes as NHS figures also show that just 36% of patients were seen by a qualified GP in North East Lincolnshire in March. Nationally, just 51% of appointments were with a doctor last month. Have you got any experience of this, ladies and gentlemen? GB Views at gbnews.uk. How well would you rate your service at the moment? Have we come out of this pandemic now and we're back to normal, or are you still struggling?
Yes, well, Dr Rachel Ward works at Woodlands Medical Centre and joins us now. Thank you for joining us, Rachel. I mean, what do you make of some of this research? Are doctors stressed, anxious and just not really enjoying the job?
Absolutely. I think everybody in the NHS, it's not just GPs, has had a very difficult, challenging time over the last couple of years, of course, for many reasons. And this data does focus on GPs, but we know that there are high levels of stress, burnout, people leaving the profession, sadly, which is a huge problem because of the ongoing immense workload.
Yeah, so some people say it was a bit of a chicken and egg situation, really, but is it, in your view, then, are you saying that the reason why people can't maybe get as quick an appointment as they would like is because the workload is having such a large impact on GPs?
So people can't get an appointment as quickly as they like because there aren't enough GPs to meet the demand. So we're doing more appointments than ever before, and we have fewer GPs than previously. So if we look at, I think we have to remember that pre-pandemic, this service was far from perfect. It was already under strain. People then also had difficulty getting appointments. But adding into the pandemic, the strains that we have gone through, treating people with COVID, rolling out 75% of the biggest vaccine program we've ever seen. People are leaving the profession, but the demand from patients is higher. Of course, we also know there is huge demand in hospitals, so that has a knock-on effect, how many people are seeing their GP, almost like a holding bay whilst waiting to see a specialist, which can take up to years at the moment. Putting it in perspective, the same studies that you're talking about showed that 45% of people actually saw their GP on the same day that they requested an appointment, which actually I think is pretty impressive in the current climate.
Okay, look, I was doing a bit of research into this, just about GPs' salaries and things. And what I thought was quite interesting was, for a lot of GPs who are on between 100 and 120 grand a year, if they do overtime, which presumably they would have to do to help clear this backlog, they actually get taxed at about 72%, which essentially nullifies the incentives to do any overtime, if, of course, you are more financially motivated, shall we say, than anything else. That's an issue. And do you suspect that if GPs were not taxed at 72% or so, anyway, or 60-odd% anyway, for their overtime, that they might be more inclined to do the overtime?
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure where you're getting your figures from, Patrick, of those salaries. Certainly, I wish I did earn that. I don't. And of course, we have to publish, every practice has to publish the earnings of their GP, unlike most other professions. So you can see what your local GP is earning. Of course, there is always going to be people at the top of the salary scale, but that is not a standard salary. So no, I don't think actually that is a reason that people are not doing overtime. I think the reason that people are not doing overtime is they're already doing huge numbers of hours. And there's a limit as to how much you can give holistic, good, accurate care for people per week. I think that's the reason.
All right, fair enough. And how do you respond now? Because you must be getting a lot of pushback from patients. I certainly get a lot in my inbox. I'm getting a lot right now, kind of horror stories, really, of being unable to get appointments, this, that and the other. Do you feel like we're in a situation now where it's a bit us and them? GPs have never been so unpopular, have they?
Absolutely right. The recent survey did show that people are very unsatisfied with the service, that actually the NHS and GPs both are least satisfied than ever shown before, which is, deeply upsetting for us. I think what we have to get past is this. I don't think it is an us or them. We want the same thing. We don't want our patients to be dissatisfied with the care. We want to offer superb care to our patients that, they are very, very pleased with. I think what we'd like people to understand is that we are up against it with the demand, with an underfunded, understaffed service. It's interesting, isn't it, that we look at other services, for example, child mental health service, for example, in this area, you will wait for 2.5 years for an appointment at the moment, which, also represents the strain that the system is under. But I don't think the same rhetoric lies that, talking about psychiatrists' salaries and working part-time and how many hours they do. So I'm not sure why this has become such a thing, but I think it is very damaging, actually, for the relationship between GPs and patients.
Just clear something up for me quickly, sorry, because a lot of people say, well, hang on a minute, I was unable to see my GP at my local medical centre, but I could go and see them privately. So how come GPs can do that for people, but, not do it at the local medical centre?
So we cannot offer private services to our patients in our practice. So, of course, private services exist elsewhere. That is always the case, as with every specialty. But it is against our contract to offer private service to our own patients. So I think there is some inaccuracy in that statement. But, of course, there's private healthcare out there.
I wanted to clear up, sorry.
There's always been private GPs.
No, absolutely. Sorry, just to clear it up for me. Why couldn't you just not offer a private service but offer more in practice then?
We don't offer private services, that's what I'm saying. We're not allowed to offer.
Yeah, so couldn't you just do more appointments in your practice as opposed... Could you not just do more appointments in your practice as opposed to taking a day away from your practice to go and see private patients, presumably for more money?
I don't know any GPs who does any private GP work. It tends to be a completely separate setup. Certainly nobody in my entire area does any private GP work, and it is very unusual. It's a very different way of practicing. So the question of getting more appointments, yes, of course we want more appointments, but there's only so many that people can do per week. On average now in England, a GP will do 46 per day, which is way beyond the safety level which is recommended. So just asking for more and more appointments from the same people does not mean good care going forward. It doesn't mean safe care.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Dr. Rachel Ward, for sharing your thoughts. Dr. Rachel Ward works at Woodlands Medical Centre. Thank you. Well, a new report by the Commission on Young Lives in England says black children are being disadvantaged in schools because teachers, quote, adultify them. They say teachers are treating black children like mini adults, meaning the children are being looked at slightly less and getting the protecting and nurturing that they need to develop. It comes, of course, after a 15-year-old black girl was strip-searched by police, Child Q, that is, that we covered on this show. Well, Chris McGovern is the chairman of the Campaign for Real Education and joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. I mean, when I first looked into this, I'm not denying that this is a phenomenon that is real, but one of the things that came to mind was for example, the grooming gang scandal in the UK, and a lot of the time that young working class girls were seen as not as important or not as worthy of being looked after. So I wondered, is there a class dimension to this? Happen, the response is often to look at it from a racial lens. But potentially there is a class dimension that could be a more significant factor. What do you think?
Well, I think you're probably right. Class comes into it very much so. Just generally, I remember David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister, telling his party conference that we've got the worst rate of social mobility in the developed world, and if anything, it's getting worse. I was a bit concerned, though, on this report which had just come out to say that only black children are being adultified, treated like adults. But I think actually all children, young children in particular, 5-year-olds, being asked to sort of question their gender identity and so forth, but tended to treat children like adults, to unload our own angst as adults onto the shoulders of young children, not letting them have a child.
Hang on a minute. It's all very well and good saying we're treating black children like adults, but hang on a second, we're treating primary school children like adults when it comes to sexualised and gender-based content, aren't we? Teaching 6-year-olds about whether or not they've been born into the wrong body. That's a very adult conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, you're taking the words out of my mouth. Absolutely right. We are making adults out of young children, and that is wrong. We say, you've got to share in our concerns. A lot of adults have a lot of problems. We all have problems as adults. Children have a right to be children, and we're asking them to actually share in our concerns. I would like to see children being treated as children. So that there is a real problem there. I don't think it's based on race. I think, the report which has just come out suggesting that black children suffer more is misleading, because it suggests that teachers are racist. And actually, I've been a teacher for 35 years. I'm often quite critical of my profession. But what I can say, if there's any profession in the country, in the world, it's teachers who are non-racist. The teachers do not promote racism. So I think the commissioner is wrong. They're saying that, we've got to look at this through the racist lens. There are misbehaving children in school. There are a large number of black children, or too many black children perhaps being excluded. But there's not as many black children being excluded as Romani or traveller children. They far exceed the black children. It's not about race. There is a problem. And when commissioners come on the radio, on the newspapers, and say, we've got to put it right, well, let me tell her something. You show us how to put it right. You go into a classroom for a year with disturbed youngsters, be filmed, and show the teaching profession how to do the job. Because I'll tell you something, half of the teaching profession, we know from the statistics, are trying to get out the job. They've had enough. And this constant criticism of what they're doing, I think, is wrong. They're doing the best they can. They're not racist. And perhaps they are failing in many respects, but they're not failing because they're racist. They're not racist at all.
Yeah,
it's just a fact of life.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what you said, Chris. I mean, I often speak to kids about race and racism within schools, and if anything, teachers are falling over themselves, trying to say the right thing, try to teach about race and racism, and oftentimes they just don't really know what to do. And I mean, looking at the recommendations, it says better race equality, teacher training, or more inclusive curriculum. I'm not sure how that, has anything to do with some of the issues that are raised. I mean, what does that necessarily get to the heart of the problem? And I do worry that when these situations come out, that the response is more anti-racism training. But actually, maybe we should be holding kids to a higher expectation. There was a campaign a few years ago where people were saying that, we shouldn't discipline young black kids when they kiss their teeth, that that's a kind of cultural expression and things like that. Are we holding young black kids to the same standards? I mean, what do you think?
Look, black kids do well, white kids do well, but if anybody fails, it's white working class kids. I've taught black kids, and look, I've taught loads of kids. I've taught in large schools of 2,000 and so forth, all sorts of children. And essentially, the message teachers, I think, have is that they should, and mostly they do, they treat children for what they are. And if they misbehave, then yes, they will intervene. And it is true that black children, on the whole, seem to be excluded more than middle-class white kids. But as I said, the ones look at a group who really are getting excluded in larger numbers than black kids. It's Romani and it's travellers, and they're categorised as white ethnic on the census returns. So we're getting ourselves into a real muddle here. And I come back to the point I challenge Anne Longfield, the Children's Commissioner or former Children's Commissioner, to show us, the profession, how it is done. Get yourself into a class in an inner city school with disturbed children and we'll film you and see how long you last. Because some of these teachers are doing an heroic job. And I say that as someone who often criticises my profession. But look, many teachers are doing a great job.
Totally agree.
That could be a challenge Christie's for one of my Friday night shows. That just send me into an inner city comp in Brixton or something and just see how I fare.
See how you get on. Yes.
Yeah,
it isn't easy.
Exactly. Never to be seen again. No, of course. Chris McGovern, thank you very much. He's the chairman of the Campaign for Real Education.
Quick plug for Challenge
7 till 9
Christie.
p.m. Friday night feast. By the way, you're not going to want to miss today's challenge. Well, I actually did nearly die.
Yeah. Well, glad you survived for the show.
OK, right. But you want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I go into schools, in around the UK and to talk about race and racism, and teachers are falling over themselves. They want to show that they are anti-racist, that they are doing good. This idea that schools up and down this country are riddled with racism and that is a fundamental problem of schools, it's just frankly false. And after we've had the pandemic, where inequality when it comes to education has been entrenched, and actually the school catch-up czar resigned because the government wouldn't give them enough funding. I think that's what we need to be looking at when it comes to education, making sure that they're properly funded, we have quality teachers that are holding kids to high expectations. That, I think, levels the playing field.
Yeah, controversial view. I think there's a pretty low bar for teaching in this country. I know quite a lot of teachers and...
Well, I think they should be paid more.
I wouldn't want them anywhere near my kids, put it that way. But anyway, there we go. Right.
And why is that, Patrick?
Because I don't think they're capable of teaching them. Right, OK, so lots of people getting in touch to say GP appointments, yes, they've got a bit of a problem with trying to get some of them. And someone said there, I don't know what planet that GP was on, 15 GPs in my surgery, and after filling an online form for a request for an appointment face-to-face with my GP at the end of March, I received a phone call to say that I could not have one for several more months, and that's from Leslie. And yes, absolutely, lots of people saying that they understand as well, though GPs are under a lot of pressure at the moment, and that can impact their mental health. Keep your thoughts coming into us on email, gbviews, gbnews.uk. We're going to stick with them just for a moment or two.
Yes, I mean, many people echoing many of the things that you've said about GPs. But, I think the NHS is a black hole when it comes to funding.
Yeah.
The more money you put into it, the more money it goes, and it does seem to be just a long-standing issue when it comes to actually morale, actually good services.
Yeah.
Perhaps we need to be looking at what other options are available. I don't know.
I hope Starmer and his deputy are not forced to resign. It could lead to Labour becoming electable. And that's from Bruce. Thank you very much, Bruce. This is, of course, returning back to beer gates. We've had party gates, now we've got porn gates and beer gates. You can't move for gates in the House of Commons at the moment. There's gates everywhere.
I've got many people in GBViews accusing me of being a Labour supporter. That is not true.
No, you're a rampant Lib Dem, aren't you? No, I'm joking, absolutely, yes. No, look, loads of you get in touch. Keep this beer gate stuff going, all right? Partygate was dragged through the headlines endlessly, wasn't it, for absolutely ages. Now, if you are just joining us, it appears, anyway, that Labour was a little bit squiffy with the truth when it came to what was going on in Durham. Was it a party? Was Angela Rayner there? This, that and the other. Well, keep all your thoughts coming into us on email. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of the top stories and plenty of your views after this very short break. Stay tuned, people.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Another fine day for most of us. Sunny for many, especially the west, but it will stay cloudy in some areas, especially the east. We have at the moment high pressure centred over the UK, but around that high winds are coming in generally from the east still, so it's much cooler in the east, and there is still some stubborn cloud coming in from the North Sea, so that will tend to stick around, I think, for eastern and central parts of England through much of the day. Cloud building also for central parts of Scotland, perhaps the odd shower for the Highlands and the Grampians. Otherwise, for the vast majority, it's a dry day, and the best of the sunshine will be across northern England, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest, where we get the sunshine, 15, 16, perhaps even 17 Celsius, but where we keep that easterly breeze, Norwich, only 11 degrees. Into the evening, and cloud will float further south, and it will break up for a time, so lengthy clear spells, especially for much of England and Wales, and it's under those clear skies across the southern half of the UK where the lowest temperatures will be a touch of frost. In sheltered spots, a chilly start to the day, 2 Celsius there in Birmingham, 3 in London, but a milder start for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, 6 or 7 degrees here.
because the cloud is arriving. And that cloud brings some rainfall, mainly during Saturday morning, northern and western Scotland, Northern Ireland as well. A damp start to the day, some heavier bursts coming along by the afternoon for the west coast of Scotland and for the higher ground. But for much of England and Wales, when it stays dry, there'll be some decent spells of sunshine, and it's warmer, especially in the east, where temperatures could rise to 17 or 18 degrees. Now, the rain in the north tends to stumble further south into Saturday evening, reaching North Wales, parts of northern England. It breaks up. It's largely light and patchy, so not particularly helpful for gardeners, I suspect. And then showers to start next week, turning drier later.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Inaya Falarin on your TV, radio and online. We're with you all the way through until midday. So another hour of the biggest stories, the best guests and loads of your views, as well as top discussion.
Yes, make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be getting to those throughout the show. But first, it's the latest news.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. 2 British charity workers have reportedly been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. It's understood the volunteers were detained earlier this week at a checkpoint close to Zaporizhia in the south. The 2 men, both civilians, were working as part of a joint humanitarian project to help provide food and medical supplies, as well as evacuation support. The reports haven't yet been independently verified. A special operation will take place today to try and evacuate civilians from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. The decision was announced by the Ukrainian President's office. Hundreds of civilians are said to be sheltering in bunkers underneath the plant, which has been sealed off by Russian forces. It's thought around 500 wounded Ukrainian fighters are in there, some in a serious condition. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has accused Russia of trying to humiliate the United Nations. It's after 2 missiles were fired into Kyiv during a visit by Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. The rockets shook the central district in Ukraine's capital. One of them struck a residential building, injuring at least 10 people. Kyiv's Mayor Vitaly Klitschko says the city's still a target for Russia.
Kyiv is still the target of Russians, yes, of course. The capital of Ukraine is a goal, and they want want to occupy it. They doesn't have a chance to do that. Thanks for Ukrainian forces, for Ukrainian soldiers. They destroy the plans of Russians, but we see the risk, huge risk, regular attack, and right now it's main priority to save the lives of the people.
The Ministry of Defence is sending around 8,000 British troops to Eastern Europe this summer in an effort to support Ukraine. Dozens of tanks will be sent to countries including Finland and North Macedonia in one of the largest deployments since the Cold War. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace called the decision a show of solidarity and strength alongside NATO allies. Defence Select Committee Chair Tobias Ellwood told GB News the campaign against Russia lacks real leadership.
There isn't an international leader right now. There's no Churchillian figure that's actually drawing all together the countries from across Europe. It's the leader of the Western world is not nowhere to be seen really on this front. NATO needs to recognise that it needs to, I think, regroup after the humiliation of Afghanistan, recognise that it must invest in its equipment and its posture. It's important that Putin recognises that we are serious.
Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says she's appalled by the arrest in the US of the British Virgin Islands Premier on drug trafficking charges. Andrew Foy was detained by the Drug Enforcement Agency in Miami over an alleged conspiracy to import cocaine and money laundering. The DEA says Foy agreed to use British Virgin Islands ports to ship cocaine in return for a payment of $500,000. The government is stepping up efforts to tackle supply shortages affecting hormone replacement therapy. Health Secretary Sajid Javid has appointed Madeleine McTurnan, Director of the COVID vaccine rollout, to lead a new HRT task force. The Department of Health and Social Care says lessons learned from rolling out the coronavirus jab will be used to resolve supply issues. And three-time Wimbledon champion Boris Becker could be sent to jail when he's sentenced for flouting the terms of his 2017 bankruptcy later. The former world #1 tennis player was found guilty of transferring hundreds of thousands of pounds from his business account and failing to declare a property in his hometown of Leimen, Germany. Becker was also convicted of hiding an €825,000 bank loan. A British terrorist known for being one of 4 ISIS militants nicknamed the Beatles is being sentenced in a US court today. 38-year-old Alexander Amon Koti from West London was convicted for his role in the torture and killings of Western hostages in Syria in the mid-2010s. Koti pleaded guilty to a range of charges relating to US victims and could face the rest of his life behind bars. And Amazon has recorded its first quarterly loss since 2015 as the pandemic boom to its business starts to fade. The e-commerce giant says online sales slipped 3% in the first 3 months of the year post-lockdown. Rising costs, supply chain issues and the impact of the war in Ukraine have all affected the retail giant. Amazon reported a loss of $3.8 billion, much of that driven by a hit from its investment in electric car maker Rivian. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, let's return to the point with Patrick and Anaya.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flaren Iman and Patrick Christie's on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for the final hour, so here's what's on the menu.
Yeah, where did that first hour go? Hey, anyway, 8,000 British soldiers will be sent to Eastern Europe to deter Russian aggression in the largest deployment of troops since the Cold War. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace calling it a show of solidarity and strength as UK service personnel join NATO allies.
Yes, and Labour's Beergate, the opposition party, is under fire over a reported lockdown breach after the Mail confirms Angela Rayner was with Keir Starmer when he was pictured drinking a bottle of beer. Is this a double standard?
Yes. And finally, an MP this week has been accused of watching porn in the House of Commons.
Tut, tut, tut.
I mean, goodness gracious me. Could the guy maybe have an addiction to watching hardcore pornography? Did they want to be seen? The plot thickens Or were they actually not watching porn and it's all a big mistake, of course? Anyway, we'll ask adult film star Brooklyn Blue if such a thing can even happen. There we go.
Yes, interesting. Well, we have all that coming up and much more across the programme, so make sure you get in touch with your views as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yes, it's the 65th day of the Russian invasion into Ukraine, and the MOD reports that around 8,000 British Army troops will participate in military exercises across Eastern Europe to combat Russian aggression.
This is one of the largest deployments since the Cold War. Dozens of tanks will be deployed to countries ranging from Finland to North Macedonia this summer. Meanwhile, tributes have been paid to Scott Sibley after the Foreign Office confirmed the British national died in Ukraine and another is missing.
Indeed. Well, Brooks Newmark is a former Conservative MP for Braintree and joins us live with the latest. Brooks, we've gone to you numerous times now, as you've been there, I suppose, in Eastern Europe, doing various bits and bobs, helping out, especially women and children, really. Moved over 7,600 women and children to safety since the war started. How do you think the deployment of British troops in the vicinity, 8,000 of them, is going to impact this conflict?
Well, I think the most important thing is we're signaling a message to Putin that we are serious. The big issue, though, is following the recent missile attack on 2 civilian buildings in Kyiv, while the Secretary General of NATO is in the capital, it, to me, sends a strong message from the Russians that they're not really serious about negotiation. If they're not serious about negotiation, we really do need to continue to signal to them that we are serious. I'm certainly one of the proponents that, just having seen what went on in Syria, particularly early on in the war, where the Russians were, again, bombing civilian areas with Assad, committing war crimes. We're seeing a repeat of that action here in Ukraine. And we know the Russian playbook. They have no respect for international law, international norms. And I do think we do need to step up and protect. I think one of the big issues, though...
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just quickly on that point that you said that we're signalling to Russia that we are serious. But are we serious? If Russia continues after we do deploy troops to Eastern Europe and they continue to advance, would we be willing, or do you think we should be willing, to escalate the conflict or to do more to support Ukraine?
I certainly think we should be doing more to support Ukraine. I support the Foreign Secretary's certainly wish to try and supply the Ukrainians with airplanes so they can at least protect the skies. What we saw, at least what I saw, certainly at the beginning of this war and certainly previously in Syria, is the Russians really used planes to devastate not just military targets, but particularly to target civilian areas, I think committing war crimes. And we have to see, what our stomach is, as the public at large, as to how much we want to engage. The big issue is that we engaged in Afghanistan, we engaged in Iraq, and I just think it's, we generally need the public on side if we are to take things further. It's not just us, but it's the Americans too. This whole Iraq, Afghanistan hangover, as it's referred to, I think is having an impact on our ability to take Putin on in a much more aggressive way.
OK. I suppose one of the arguments will be that Putin has an arsenal of nuclear weapons, whereas potentially Afghanistan, well, definitely Afghanistan and Iraq did not. But just in terms of the slow drip of our military resources being used, we keep sending numbers of weapons and then maybe numbers of vehicles, for example. Actually, would we be better using it almost all at once? Because is Putin playing quite a clever game here, even though I think we can all agree he messed it up a bit at the start? Is he trying to just really deplete our military slowly? Because there seems to be the fact that that's what we're doing.
Actually, I don't want to contradict you. It's actually just the opposite that's happening.
No, good. But Phil, that's what I'm saying. Please, Phil, because we had a guest earlier who suggested that maybe that was the case. So I want to get your views.
Yeah, no. What's going on is because Russia's unable to get the parts and the supply for particularly guided missiles, for example, their weaponry is fast declining. And so the more, for me, unfortunately, the longer this war drags out, yes, the civilian casualties will continue to go up, but it's going to put more and more pressure, I think, on the Russians to possibly, and I don't believe it's going to happen, possibly come to the negotiating table. I think one of the issues that we have to think about is, are we going to be subject to nuclear blackmail every time the Russians want to do something? So if we say, gosh, we're not going to do anything in Ukraine because we're worried about Putin's nuclear abilities, whether he's going to press the button or not, then fine, he'll take Moldova. So then he'll have Ukraine, Moldova. Why not take Georgia? So at some stage, we do need to draw a line. And, NATO's forces are 10 times the size of the Russians. The way the Russians have executed the war, certainly in the beginning, has been appalling. So I think we've seen that Putin and his military is a bit of a straw man. So the only thing he has now is his threat of pressing the nuclear button. I spoke to some expert friends of mine last night, who are specialists in this area, and they think that, while we all believe Putin has the ability and power to do anything, that the military at the end of the day will call the shots. And I don't think anybody feels that the military will let Putin start a nuclear war.
Well,
Interesting
Brooks,
stuff. Yeah, hopefully you're right, Brooks.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts, Brooke Newmark, former Conservative MP for Braintree. Thank you.
Yes.
I would say that I agree completely with what Brooks said. I don't think that we can just allow Russia to just use the nuclear threat, because then where is the line?
Where does that end? Where does that end?
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, I think that Russia has made such a grave mistake that the actions they have taken may well lead to the disintegration of the Russian state eventually, because of the isolation, instability and economic hardship that it has effectively unleashed upon itself. And I think we have to may well prepare for something quite long.
Something quite long and, look, potentially quite radical as well. If
what
he really
do you
does
think,
need.
Patrick, though? Do you think that the line has been passed, or do you think that actually we should still be being cautious when it comes to intervention?
I think, I think initially I was, because I thought Putin there may be an argument just that he'd completely lost it, right? And if that was the case, then actually, him pressing the big red nuclear button becomes a very realistic possibility. So I wanted to kind of wait and see how this panned out. I think he got off to a terrible start with this. My concern would be that I don't think that if we even put boots on the ground in Ukraine, if we drew the line there, I just don't think we'd be supported, really, by a lot of European allies.
So you think it should be an American-British
Well, I think it might have to be.
Yeah.
And I think we might have to start calling out more publicly our European friends and other NATO allies, just to say, look, OK, this is where we're drawing the line now. I mean, George Bush's famous thing of you're either with us or against us, of course, that didn't end up turning out too well. But something maybe a little bit like that, really, because, the fact that the French or the Germans can be held to ransom by Vladimir Putin, not by his nuclear deterrent, but by gas and oil. If we draw a line, then I'm sorry, they would have to do something about that, I think.
Yeah, and there still doesn't seem to be this sense of urgency, this realisation that they need to become energy independent.
Yeah.
It's not even like a fast-moving set of circumstances where they are now making sure that they don't put themselves in this situation. I think history will judge the actions of many of these nations very strongly as the years go by.
Exactly. It's going to be very hard to justify, and I think with every day that goes past where there's an inaction, especially with Germany, by the way, I think Germany has lost all credibility as a nation, frankly. I mean, look, I don't want to ever want people to go, don't bring up the war. I'll say which one, because both of them are quite important, actually. But, the fact is that now there's another one potentially on Europe's doorstep, and the Germans haven't covered themselves in glory there either. The German governments, I should say, have not covered themselves in glory with that one either, have they?
And just quickly, I think Brooks was totally right that there is a lot of weariness when it came to, for example, the consequences of the Iraq War and Afghanistan. But I do think this is not the same. I think there is clear moral lines here. One, this is a flagrant violation of sovereignty, unjustified, and I think it's not comparable to Afghanistan and Iraq. That's just my views.
No, that's fair enough. Is Boris Becker German? Because we're sticking with the German theme. If he is German, yes, famously so. Yeah. Former world #1 tennis star, Boris Becker, is facing 7 years in prison for fraud, with his sentencing due to take place this afternoon. So our reporter Ellie Costello tells us more.
Wimbledon champion Boris Becker was found guilty of concealing hundreds of thousands of pounds following his bankruptcy 5 years ago. The court heard how he transferred £350,000 to other accounts, hid a property in Germany and failed to declare 75,000 shares in a tech firm and a £700,000 loan. He was convicted under the Insolvency Act by Southwark Crown Court on April the 8th. The father of four was legally obliged to disclose all of his assets when he was declared bankrupt in 2017 over an unpaid loan of more than £3 million on his estate in Mallorca. Once nicknamed Boom Boom for his powerful, dominant serve, he was acquitted on another 20 charges, including failing to hand over trophies and medals from his tennis career. The former world #1 has claimed 49 singles titles during his 16 years as a tennis pro. During the trial, Becker said that his £38 million career earnings had been swallowed by his expensive divorce, child maintenance payments, and expensive lifestyle commitments, including a house in Wimbledon that cost £22,000 in rent each month. He said bad publicity had damaged brand Becker, making it hard for him to earn enough to pay off his debts. He claimed he had done wrong, but not knowingly. Ellie Costello, GB News.
Well, there we go. And Ellie actually joins us now from Southwark Crown Court. Good morning, Ellie. Thank you very much. What a fall from grace for Boris Becker, hey? How likely do you think it is that he will serve jail time?
Well, hi, Patrick and Anaya. It is absolutely a fall from grace for this former tennis world champion, now facing a very public financial disaster. He was the golden boy of tennis in the 80s and 90s, a hugely popular character, and we are expecting him to arrive here at Southwark Crown Court any moment now. There's a huge pool of press here, not only from the UK, but also from across Europe. There's German broadcasters here as well. Of course, Boris Becker is German. There's also a wall of spectators of the public trying to capture a glimpse of Boris Becker as he arrives at the courthouse. And if that happens whilst we're on air, of course, I will bring that to you. But he could be facing jail time today, up to 7 years, after being found guilty of moving thousands of pounds from a bank account after declaring bankruptcy. And earlier on this month, at this very same courthouse, the jury heard how he was using his business account as a piggy bank for his own personal spending. We were told that he was spending thousands of pounds in Harrods and at Ralph Lauren. He spent £40,000 on an ankle operation at a private clinic, £10,000 on a private jet company. Also during that trial, he was asked about his Wimbledon trophies. He was asked why they weren't handed over when he declared bankruptcy. Boris Becker claiming he had no idea where they were. They were actually lost. He wasn't found guilty on that charge, but he was found guilty on 4 others, which does carry that term of a maximum of 7 years. So what do I think will happen today? Well, we won't know until we're in the courtroom whether it will be a prison sentence or perhaps a suspended sentence. But I have been speaking to legal experts this morning who are saying they think it's likely that he will be handed a prison sentence between 2 to 5 years. Obviously, that maximum sentence is 7 years, but of the 2 to 5, he may only serve about 9 months in jail. There were pictures of Boris Becker yesterday with his family in London. It looked as though he was quite emotional, perhaps saying goodbye, perhaps readying himself to go down this afternoon. But it does depend, of course, whether the judge and jury take into consideration his defence. His defence lawyer, Boris Becker's defence lawyer, said that he had bad advisors, that he was seeking advice from the wrong people who were there for his fame and from his wealth. And Boris Becker said he was shocked and embarrassed when he was made bankrupt. He had no idea that that was coming. But Patrick and Anaya, this is going to happen very shortly now. We are expecting Boris Becker any moment for that sentencing at 12 p.m. at Southwark Crown Court.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for the latest on that, Ellie Costello there, outside Southwark Crown Court, as we await the sentencing of tennis sensation Boris Becker. Like we started there, quite a fall from grace.
Well, after the break, a roundup of this week's biggest political stories: Beergate, Legsgate and Porngate.
Yeah.
It's all been
Yes,
as
I've
big
forgotten
as
about
Watergate, apparently.
Yes, indeed. All right, gosh, it's all going on. Loads of gates. All right, stay tuned, everybody.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
It's 11:25 a.m. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Flower Inman, and Patrick Christie's. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
We most certainly are. Now, it's been a week of Watergates down in Westminster this week, hasn't it? So we had, let's try and round them all off. So we've had Beergate, where Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer and, of course, Deputy Leader Angela Rayner enjoyed a beer together, apparently, after a campaign meeting in Durham, breaking, it would appear anyway, local lockdown laws.
Then we had Legsgate, where Angela Rayner supposedly confessed to trying to distract the Prime Minister in Commons by crossing and uncrossing her legs as he spoke.
I'm not exactly sure exactly what kind of distraction that would pose. But anyway. And finally, we even had Porngate, that's right, after an MP claimed she saw a fellow member watch pornography, and member's probably the wrong word here, in Parliament. All of this, of course, occurring as the Partygate investigation continues in the background. But are these scandals really scandalous enough to attract the gate suffix, or are we all just crying wolf?
Well, here to give his thoughts is Joseph Robertson, Director of Orthodox Conservatives Group. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme. I mean, what do you make of this all? I mean, one of the things I'm worrying, is this a sign that our politics are, really in the bin? really, right now.
Yeah. I think the problem is trying to focus on where the key issues are rather than looking at everything all at once. For instance, with the whole Porngate thing, I guess the question is really why are MPs on their phones in the middle of an important debate? And is there something to be said there that perhaps there's a bit too much of a casual approach to politics at the moment? On things like, the PM being fined, I mean, on the flip side of that, really, that fine was probably less than a parking ticket, while people are opening up their tax bills today and yesterday as we come to the end of the month and finding they're having a massive deficit there because tax hikes have gone up. So again, I think we need to look at the real stories rather than all the headlines, you know.
Yeah, but on the Angela Rayner point, and also to some extent the Porngate, there has seemed to be growing stories of quite dodgy behaviour when it comes to sexual harassment and just sexual antics when it comes to the House of Commons. And is that a serious point that we genuinely need to be looking into? I've spoken to many women that work in and around politics that have complained about this issue, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, there's been new reports today as well with sort of harassment claims and that kind of thing coming out. So I think we go back a few years, we had the Damien Green incident where there was sort of the porn found on the laptop or on the computer. And you can...
Is there a bit of exhibitionism there? You know, it's a person... Did he like the idea that he was doing it in Parliament?
Perhaps
he might have got off of...
So what you're saying is that they need to be more whipped? No? It's about time someone made this joke, people. It's about time someone made this joke about Porngate, OK? If I had to be the one to do it, then fair enough. Fair enough. No, but carry on.
Well, I was going to say, going even further back, you can go all the way back to John Prescott as well, certain desk incidents that happened. And
grief, yes.
I mean, you know, Miss Green is still working as an MP. So even though these people have falls from grace, they seem to bounce back quite quickly. So I agree. I think there's a certain breach of the Nolan principles going on here, which isn't being taken very seriously. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
In terms of Partygate, right, I have been on record numerous times saying, look, I didn't massively care about it, and I get the argument for the reason why maybe I should have cared about it more than I did. I just didn't. And I don't actually really care about Beergate either. But what I do care about is that it's been dominating the news agenda now for absolutely ages. The ruthless way which Keir Starmer, if he can ever be called ruthless, was at the dispatch box going, you know, you're a liar, you're a hypocrite, we've got morals in this country. Then it emerges that maybe a little bit of lying has taken place when it comes to the Labour side of it. That's what I really care about. And I also care about, this morning, the BBC's homepage, no mention of it. The Guardian's homepage, no mention of it. I mean, there's a rampant hypocrisy here, surely.
Absolutely. I mean, this is interesting for me because one of my colleagues at OC actually filmed that video.
Right.
So I know when this was filmed, and it was a long time ago. And I think the fact that the media are picking up on it just now shows to me that there's been a blatant campaign purely against the PM, trying to drag him down. Now, I'm not defending what he did. I've been on record as not defending that. But the point, it still remains, you know, Starmer was doing this. Sturgeon also had her own sort of... sandwiches here and there.
And there's
Diwali dance.
Drakeford was over in Bristol, I believe, at a hotel at some point, which hasn't come out yet. But, you know, they've all done these things. And I think the problem is really about the rules that are in place rather than about breaking them. So, yeah, I think if we're going to reconsider it, we need to look at the whole policy of lockdown. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I'm very sorry about this. I think stay where you are for now. But my understanding is we can see Boris Becker outside court. So naturally we're going to go. There he is. Off he pops. Boris Becker there, of course, outside Southwark Crown Court. Just arriving there now for his sentencing. Rumours are, of course, anything between something like 2 to 7 years, or, of course, a suspended sentence as well. We'll have to wait and see. But there we go, sandwiched in between Boris Becker there. But
Beckergate,
Beckergate, it writes itself.
I mean, what's your reaction to, for example, the Speaker trying to call in the editor of the Mail on Sunday? Some people are saying, you know, it was a crass story, but this seemingly is an attack on press freedom now. It's escalated way beyond the original reaction.
Yeah, I think there's two ways to look at it. One, we're all getting bored of all these gates. And I understand that from a parliamentary point of view, it's like, look, get a grip, let's focus on the real issues. But then again, like you said, there's press freedom. So if the press choose to run with that story, perhaps we can say they're not doing their job and not looking at the real issues, but they've got the ability to do that. So I agree they should be allowed to do that.
I don't remember Plebgate.
Yes,
Oh,
that was a long time ago.
yes,
That was a long time ago.
Many gates, many gates.
Yeah.
Gosh, that was a simpler time. Look, thank you very much for coming into the studio. Great to have you on. We'll have to do it again very, very soon.
Cheers.
Massively appreciated. But Get this. So you've been sandwiched between Boris Becker and adult film star Brooklyn Blue, who chats to us about porn. But before that, a look at this morning's news. It's highbrow stuff here. It's highbrow stuff.
It's 11:32. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. 2 British charity workers have reportedly been captured by the Russian military in Ukraine. It's understood the volunteers were detained earlier this week at a checkpoint close to Zaporizhia in the south. The 2 men, both civilians, were working as part of a joint humanitarian project to help provide food and medical supplies, as well as support evacuation. The reports haven't yet been independently verified. A special operation will take place today to try and evacuate civilians from the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. The decision was announced by the Ukrainian president's office. Hundreds of civilians are said to be sheltering in bunkers underneath the plant, which has been sealed off by Russian forces. It's thought around 500 wounded Ukrainian fighters are in there, some in a serious condition. A serving Met police officer will appear at Croydon Magistrates Court today, charged with rape. PC Ireland Murdoch is accused of committing the offence in September last year while off duty. He was arrested in January and has since been suspended from the force. The government's stepping up efforts to tackle supply shortages affecting hormone replacement therapy. Health Secretary Sajid Javid has appointed Madeleine McTurnan to lead a new HRT task force. The Department for Health and Social Care says she'll use her knowledge from the coronavirus vaccine rollout to help address the shortage. Amazon has recorded its first quarterly loss since 2015 as the pandemic boom to its business starts to fade. The e-commerce giant reported a loss of $3.8 billion. Online sales slipped 3% in the first 3 months of the year post-lockdown. Rising costs, supply chain issues and the impact of the war in Ukraine have all affected the retail giant. TV online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. To the point, Patrick and Anaya is back in just a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 11:35 and this is To The Point on GB News with me, Anaya Falarin Inman and Patrick Christie's. We're live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, right. OK, so 8,000 British Army troops will participate in military exercises across Eastern Europe to combat Russian aggression. It's a massive deployment, this, one of the largest since the Cold War, but it seems to have divided the inbox a little bit. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Do you see this as a potential act of provocation for Russia? Is this actually the start of us finally drawing in a red line that could encourage our European friends to get more involved as well?
Yes, well, earlier, Stephen and Anne, at breakfast spoke to Secretary of State for International Trade, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, about this deployment.
We're very pleased to be sending 8,000 of our amazing army troops to go and do some exercises with NATO and indeed Joint Expeditionary Force countries across Europe because it's really important exercises happen so that different nations' armies can work together and make sure that they understand each other and they can test out how best to do those defensive exercises. NATO is a defensive alliance and it's there to protect all those members of NATO. So there are always NATO exercises. There was indeed a naval one which went on earlier in the year around the northern waters of Europe called Operation Cold Response. That also happens every year. So it's an opportunity for soldiers from all the different countries to work together to share and practice experience so that should there ever be a need to defend our NATO friends and allies, our military are ready to do so. But exercises are there to ensure that the soldiers' skills, the equipment, the connectivity between armies can work as smoothly as possible. It's going to be a really big exercise, and the families, I know, will be incredibly proud of their young men and women who will be part of this exercise, because when those amazing young people sign up to join our armed forces, they do that because they're passionate about defending their country and standing up for the rule of law. So I'm sure it will be a very successful exercise, and those families should be incredibly proud of their young women and women. As ever, as I say, these exercises which happen at different scales all the time, so that our soldiers are always prepared should they have to go to war, is one that, in this very febrile time and with the appalling illegal invasion that Putin has done into Ukraine, is one that of course makes us much more aware of the risks of having to defend your nation. I hope very much that this will be an exercise and that NATO will not have to come to the aid of a NATO member because Putin oversteps any line at all. What we want to make sure is that our soldiers, sailors and airmen, as they work together as ever, can bring a coordinated strength and indeed continue to know that when the NATO Secretary General speaks and says as a defensive alliance we will defend our members, that is something that he knows is true because he is seeing these exercises taking place. Our young women have signed up to be defenders of law and order. Huge shout out to all of them, and I know that that is what all of us do. We are incredibly proud of our armed forces, as I know all those other NATO countries, young women are too, but we continue to champion what they do and to thank them that they are willing to put themselves in harm's way, and wish them well for this exercise, which I know will be a complex activity for NATO and the Joint Expeditionary Force to run. Really important that we continue always to champion and support those willing to put themselves in harm's way to defend us.
Well, that was Secretary of State for International Development and Trade, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, speaking to breakfast this morning.
Indeed. We're just moving away from the war for a while. The Earl and Countess of Wessex have returned from their tour of the Caribbean. So they visited St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Antigua and Barbuda. I mean, it's a hard life, isn't it? It's a really hard life. There's, going out there, diligently doing their service for this country in some of the most beautiful places in the world.
Yes, well, like the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge last month, the royal couple were there to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, but protests overshadowed parts of the visit. Our royal reporter Cameron Walker looks back on their time in the region.
If ever there was an omen warning of the hostile welcome, perhaps that was it. The Earl and Countess of Wessex toured the Caribbean this week to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and try to shore up support for the monarchy. But before the tour started, the Grenada leg was postponed. No reason was given. Following Barbados' decision to remove the Queen as head of state in favour of a republic, there's been growing calls for Britain to pay damages for its role in the slave trade. Ernesto Cook, a journalist at the St Vincent Times, suggests the royals should take more of an interest.
Engage the common man and find out more about what's making them want to pull away from the republic. That would be a good thing for them, I can tell you that.
Edward and Sophie got stuck in, embracing Caribbean culture, food and music.
Take me home to paradise, I wanna go home.
The couple also highlighted important charity work. Sophie's a global ambassador for a blind prevention organisation and met local representatives in St Vincent. But huge welcoming crowds were accompanied by protests. One sign called on the Queen to apologise for slavery. But the numbers attending were tiny compared to the country's population. Prince Edward was perhaps put in an uncomfortable position when the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda urged him to use his diplomatic influence over reparations. One theme remained strong though, the love and respect for Her Majesty the Queen, this year marking 70 years on the throne. It's unlikely another Caribbean country will become a republic anytime soon. But Kadeem Joseph, an Antiguan journalist, thinks Queen Elizabeth herself is the reason there's still support for the monarchy.
A lot of us see her as that figurehead, and when she passes on, and I hope that's no time soon, but if that were to happen, I think it would be easier for countries like mine to let go of the monarchy.
There's no doubt there's lots of fans of the monarchy in the Caribbean. Palace officials will be watching the reaction closely and perhaps reimagining how to approach tours to developing Commonwealth nations in the future. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Yeah, really interesting stuff that, actually. Thank you very much, Cameron, for that report. Now, I find it quite interesting, actually. Do you think that there is an almost a slightly racial element to this? It started to look, I don't necessarily agree with this myself, by the way, so don't pounce on me, but it does start to look a little bit strange, I think, when you see, you know, white posh couples in suits surrounded by largely kind of black crowds, as it were, children, etc. Is it easy to hark back to the kind of stereotypically negative things about colonialism, do you think?
Yeah, I think that even if the royal family are not racially motivated, which, you know, from what I've seen, they are not, I think that there are certain optics and imagery that can easily be weaponised for other people's ends. And I do think that there does some smack of something slightly strange. We've all seen those images and pictures and paintings from hundreds of years ago, and it can have a kind of colonial era feel. I think some people do find that uncomfortable. And I think it's fine to raise awareness of that. And maybe they can look, as they're trying to build relations across the globe in this new era, if there's other ways that they can engage that don't necessarily reaffirm those kinds of stereotypes.
Absolutely. And let's just move away from that. We're going to stick in the inbox for a little bit, OK? GBviews at gbnews.uk. We do what I like to say the show's all about you, so it might as well be. And let's talk about porn, because loads of emails are coming in about porn. There's Porngate in the House of Commons. A member of the House of Commons allegedly spotted watching some naughty stuff in the chamber.
I mean, there does seem to be something very strange about some of the people that are attracted to the House of Commons. Undoubtedly.
I agree, yes, thank you.
You know, I do think that there seems to be an over-representation of people that behave, you know...
Strangely.
Strangely when it comes to sex. And I don't know what that is. And I do wonder if it's oftentimes... They say that, you know, politicians are like the ugly celebrities. That's what they say.
Showbiz for ugly people.
Yeah, so is it not that perhaps people that never really got much attention, you know, in school or at university or wherever they went, and all of a sudden, because they've got some power, they feel a bit enjoying of that.
Especially, so there's a lot of people, it seems to be anyway, a disproportionate number of people maybe, who, yes, have some kind of sexual secret, shall we say, or some kind of sexual proclivity towards a particular fetish or niche, shall we say. And, and I wonder whether or not, though, there's an element of...
Don't kink shame.
No, how dare I?
How can we criticise someone watching porn in Parliament? That's just kink shaming.
That's kink shaming. You're just kink shaming. OK, we should be allowed to do it. No, absolutely. But, no, seriously, I do wonder whether or not it's got a link to a power thing, to a, I don't know, dominance
I think
thing.
so.
And we need to do a report in this. I'll tell you what, maybe on my Friday night show I'll be asking our politicians... more perverted, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's a good question. Maybe someone should do some academic research on it. I'm sure we will have
only got
some
about 5 hours
interesting
time live again, but
findings on that.
We'll have to find someone who can do some academic research quickly.
Bill has said that the guy should be banned from the Commons and the Lords. He thinks that we should go the whole hog, and that a lot of people often allow these people to get let off the hook, and the story just brushes past.
Absolutely, and also, as we keep saying as well, just to veer away from the pornography element for a little second, we also have a lot of views coming in about Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
People saying, actually, Patrick, it's his generals, this is Mick. His generals are in control, ultimately, of the nuclear weapons, not Putin. They all have families. They know Russia would lose a nuclear... Well, I don't know if they know Russia would lose a nuclear war, but what he's saying is he doesn't think they'll press the big red button.
And Paul says we cannot allow Putin to carry on blackmailing NATO over news. The West has not invaded Russia. The EU and continues to go on that point.
Absolutely. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, we've been saying, hadn't we, from the start of this week, we want to get more of you on the show. We want to basically get more of your views out there, but in person. You know what? We are Britain's news channel. We're the people's news channel, OK? Why? Because TV starts at home. And we're going to go now to Sue Ashcombe-Hurt, who is actually a GB News viewer, and thank you so much for joining us, Sue. It's fantastic to have you here on To The Point. We can all see you there. What kind of points did you want to talk to us about today, then, Sue? We want to get your views out there.
Well, all the main ones of the week, really, I suppose. Beergate. I think there's a very big difference between Boris and Keir Starmer, in that Boris was in his work bubble all the time. I know it's a big bubble, but that's because he's Prime Minister. Keir Starmer wasn't in his own bubble. He was God knows how many miles away from London. I don't know whether he was actually supposed to be driving at that sort of distance then. So he's not in his own bubble, he's visiting. And so was Miss Rayner. And I think that both of them have actually not followed the rules more than Boris. And when they all keep saying in Parliament that he's purposely misled Parliament, nobody can actually delve into Boris's mind. I doubt if even Boris can. But I think that nobody can say what he was thinking at the time he was in Parliament. He obviously said in his statement that he was assured that no rules were broken. So he's obviously taken some sort of advice. So
yes, I get that, Sue. I'm keen to get your view on it, because actually there's a school of thought, and I'm coming round to this school of thought, that what Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner have done could well be worse than anything that Boris Johnson has done. If Boris Johnson really was ambushed by cake, as they were saying, before a meeting, genuinely in between a meeting, a cake that didn't appear to leave a Tupperware box, whereas Keir Starmer has driven all the way to the northeast, done whatever he's done in the day, mixed with whoever he's mixed with, gone into then a closed space, supposedly done Zoom, then had a beer, then done some Zoom again, and then maybe had another beer, and then potentially, Sue, dare I say it, him and Angela Rayner lying about it. That's worse, isn't it, than Boris Johnson?
Well, that is my view. That's why I commented on it, because I think that what they've done is worse than Boris. And I think that, as I say, I think Boris is in his work bubble. Everything that he's done, whether he gets fined for other things or not, he was actually in his work bubble. And there's no rule that I can find in the COVID rules that says you can't have a cake in your own bubble. And you can't, talk to people in your own bubble. That's the whole point of the bubbles.
Mm. Yes, indeed. Can I ask where in Cheshire you're from, Sue? Because that's my neck of the woods.
I'm in Sandbach in Cheshire.
You're Sandbach, OK, all right. Yeah, it's not too far. I used to play a bit of cricket in Sandbach. I was from Wilmslow originally, so two nice parts of the world, Sue. I hope everything's good for you there. I'll be, I'll have to be visiting the Northwest again soon. I think I do miss it, actually, very much so. But, Sue, I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to get in touch with us, to watch this channel. We really do want to say here at GB News that we are the people's channel. We are a channel for the people of Britain, basically, and TV starts at home at the end of the day. So thank you so much for your tremendous support, and we'll have to have you back on as well. And with the way you spoke there, you could get your own show, Sue, no doubt about it, Sue. So thank you so much. So,
thank you.
I
I spend far too much time watching GB News, I'm afraid.
No, there's not enough. No, you don't spend enough time watching it. That's what you mean. Surely that's what you know. All right, look, thank you so much.
There's only a couple of hours a day that I don't watch it. I watch you up till 6 o'clock, and then from 9 o'clock till 11. I can't really spend much more time. I do have to do homework and eat.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Sue, every single person here really appreciates you. And we really appreciate you sticking with us as well, OK? So Sue Ashcombe there from Cheshire. Lovely, Sue. Oh, that was nice, wasn't it?
And you are such a gentleman, Patrick, aren't you?
Do you think?
Yeah.
Don't get that very often. No, OK. All right, go on then, you do this one. Oh, this is another really powerful one. Yes,
our next guest, James Monk, is a 29-year-old guy who suffered a spinal impact injury last summer that changed his life. As he was being treated for his injury, doctors made a worrying discovery. James joins us now to tell us more. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the programme. Could you just describe more about what happened, James?
Hi there. Thanks for having me. So I had a sporting injury in August last year. I sort of took a heavy knock to my back doing a water sport that I love, wakeboarding, but it's not something that's uncommon to me. I'm used to having sort of crashes and impacts. And anyway, long story short, my injury worsened over the days and weeks that then passed, with symptoms such as numb feet, which turned into 2 numb legs, and it affected my balance and my walking and various things. It was changing with me. And then I woke up one day a few months later, really early in this year, and my right eye was just completely blurry, almost complete loss of vision in that eye. I normally have, absolutely fine eyesight. So it was a worrying sort of time for me, and a very strange set of symptoms that I was really unsure what was going on and what was the problem. And after a series of NHS and private consultant meetings and appointments, it came to the conclusion that I've got MS, multiple sclerosis, and it's National MS Awareness Week this week. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to come online, speak to you guys, speak to everyone, and just help raise awareness for the cause of MS and what it's about and how it can be helped.
Absolutely, and goodness me, obviously we all wish you the very, very best, and I hope that you coming out and talking about it, maybe people recognise some symptoms that they've got, for example. Maybe they go and get themselves checked a little bit earlier. I'm just 1 year older than you, I think. I've just turned 30, and I don't know what it was like for you, but, I'm always incredibly reluctant to go to a doctor. I always think, I'm young, if this is bothering me, that's bothering me. And there have been one or two times, thankfully, nothing like as serious as what you've got, obviously, but where it's become worse as a result of me not going and getting checked. But I understand you are. Is there a crowdfunding page? I believe is there?
Yeah. So this is also a fantastic opportunity for me to thank my amazing girlfriend, my best friend Ali Taylor, and all my friends and family and extended family and friends. For organising a GoFundMe page for myself. It's currently number 2 on the GoFundMe page on the medical situation. It's help James with fight MS with life-changing treatment. Because that's also what I want to take this opportunity to do, is not necessarily, plug my own crowdfunding. It's not what this is about. This is about the awareness of MS and just touching back on what you said about the symptoms and sometimes whether you're unsure to go to a doctor or not. My symptoms were strange and very confusing to me, and I know that it's a very hard disease to have diagnosed. I'm fortunate that I managed to get it diagnosed within the first year, which gives me a fighting chance to do something about it early and have certain treatments so I can move forward with my life. But the message is kind of, if you do have strange symptoms, maybe different sensation in your limbs, particularly your feet, or your vision changes, and there's various other MS symptoms, do get it checked out, do ask your doctor, do seek help. Yeah. Because the earlier you ask and the more you push it yourself, the more likely you are to get it diagnosed early, which is a really key thing.
Okay, look, James, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please keep coming back on, all right? We would like to do updates with you. It's James Monk there, of course, who's
that'd be great.
Really, hopefully about to win his fight with. That is it from us here at To The Point. Don't go away, because up next is the briefing. But just cheeky little plug, what have you got on the weekend?
The discussion, 3 to 4 p.m. on Sunday.
And this evening, ladies and gentlemen, I've got Friday Night Feast. This week's challenge, I nearly died, a producer nearly died. And I don't want to let you into too much, but a pilot nearly died as well. There we go. Tune in 7 until 9 p.m. It's going to be absolute carnage. Oh, and I'm marrying a woman and a cat. I know, 7 till 9 p.m.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Another fine day for most of us, sunny for many, especially the west, but it will stay cloudy in some areas, especially the east. We have at the moment high pressure centred over the UK, but around that high winds are coming in generally from the east still, so it's much cooler in the east, and there is still some stubborn cloud coming in from the North Sea, so that will tend to stick around, I think, for eastern and central parts of England through much of the day. Cloud building also for central parts of Scotland, perhaps the odd shower for the Highlands and the Grampians. Otherwise, for the vast majority, it's a dry day, and the best of the sunshine will be across northern England, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, Wales and the southwest, where we get the sunshine, 15, 16, perhaps even 17 Celsius, but where we keep that easterly breeze, Norwich, only 11 degrees. Into the evening, and cloud will float further south, and it will break up for a time, so lengthy clear spells, especially for much of England and Wales, and it's under those clear skies across the southern half of the UK where the lowest temperatures will be a touch of frost. In sheltered spots, a chilly start to the day, 2 Celsius there in Birmingham, 3 in London, but a milder start for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, 6 or 7 degrees here, because the cloud is arriving. And that cloud brings some rainfall, mainly during Saturday morning, northern and western Scotland, Northern Ireland as well. A damp start to the day, some heavier bursts coming along by the afternoon for the west coast of Scotland and for the higher ground. But for much of England and Wales, when it stays dry, there'll be some decent spells of sunshine, and it's warmer, especially in the east, where temperatures could rise to 17 or 18 degrees. Now, the rain in the north tends to stumble further south into Saturday evening, reaching North Wales, parts of northern England. It breaks up, it's largely light and patchy, so not particularly helpful for gardeners, I suspect. And then showers to start next week, turning drier later.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood. Now, coming up today, help from the government for energy-intensive industries. But will it be enough? And is it right? And as the Chancellor reportedly opens